Thank you, Annie. Right, I'm just gonna, oh my gosh, I knew this would happen the second I started presenting. An animal would walk into the room, but I'm going to let that cat prowl around at my feet. So I should introduce myself first of all. Like I said, my name is Sarah Lewin. I'm head of product at Esri UK. So I look after various different areas in the business. I currently have a team of around about 60 people. And that includes our graduate program. It includes the pre-sales team, which Catherine was just speaking about, and then our internal product development team as well. And like many people at Esri UK, I've also been in the business for a very long time. I was one of those people that Chris talked about at the beginning, someone who interviewed him. So I've been here for around 25 years now, which is quite scary. So I've got around 20 minutes here. I'm going to be talking a little bit through my career journey and along the way, hopefully just highlight some of the lessons that I've learned. And then I'll lastly talk a little bit about the role that I have now. Right, so we're going to go right back to the beginning, where it all started in 1999, believe it or not. So some of you might recognise this large sinkhole in the ocean. This is the Blue Hole in Belize. Once a massive limestone cave which collapsed in, creating a very famous dive site. So back in 1999, I just completed a degree in biology and geography, and I was absolutely fixated on the idea of a career in conservation, and also following my passion for diving. So I headed off to Belize with an organisation called Coral Key Conservation. They're an NGO, and their role is all about surveying coral reefs in order to support the local communities in various parts of the world to sort of better protect and manage this, incredibly beautiful natural resource that they have on their doorsteps. So while I was out there diving, collecting loads of data about the fish and about the coral, I discovered GIS. We were actually taking that data, the data was being input into a GIS. There was a load of analysis going on, and off the back of that, they were building protection zones, which they would then hand back to the local communities. And the penny kind of dropped, and I thought, right, this is the tool that I need to be my route into the conservation space. So, actually, I should add, I've got a little bit of a photo there. That's me. I mean, I said to Claudia earlier, it looks like it's a black and white photo. Actually, I'm not quite that old. This is me there in all of my diving gear. And my colleagues there, you can see our survey line there, which we used to use so we could stay on track to capture the right information. So following on from my time out in Belize, I went back home and decided that I needed to get myself on a master's in GIS so I could learn all of these skills that I needed for my career in conservation. So I went up to Edinburgh University for the year. And had a really fantastic year there, learning all about GIS. And at the end of that year, I was all excited, I was all armed to go out and actually start working in conservation. But the downside of that is, and I probably should have done the research ahead of time, is that what I very quickly found out that if I wanted to be paid anything to work in conservation at the time, even with all the GIS skills that I had, I really needed some experience under my belt first. And because I was carrying with me, a student debt, all the debt from traveling, all of this weighed quite heavily on me. And I decided that the best thing to do is to take a sideways move to get myself that experience before jumping into conservation. And so I took a job in Esri UK. So this is me in my first year at Esri UK. Believe it or not, that is the plenary stage at our main annual conference. The pictures you saw earlier from Catherine just show how sort of slick and professional that is now. It did not look like that 25 years ago. I am horrified at the number of cables you can see strewn all over the desk there, but this is what it used to look like. And that was year number one. And as I mentioned before, 25 years later, and I'm still at Esri UK. So it's not exactly what I had planned when I first set out. I had this fixation with conservation, but what I did find over the course of the first number of years at Esri UK is that I could actually fulfill, some of my original goals of having an impact in that conservation space by supporting and working with the conservation customers as part of my role at Esri UK. What I also found out was that I really enjoyed my job. I loved the company that I was working for, and really importantly, and this sort of goes back to what Catherine was talking about, I fitted really neatly into the culture. I had a great social scene, and I just loved being there. The other thing I discovered quite quickly, or over the course of the first number of years, is that as much as I did love the technology, I also liked working with people more, and therefore I decided that I wanted to take more of a management route. And I think it's really interesting, you know, to think of all the people on this call. I can see, you know, many of you are logged on, but as much as, well, I'm going to have to get rid of this cat, my goodness me. Sorry about that. That is the beauties of working from home. Yeah, I thought it'd be really interesting to sort of, you know, think about the people on this call. I suspect a lot of you have a view of where you think you want to be in 5 years. And for a number of you, I'm absolutely sure that that's what the next 5 years will look like. But also for quite a number of you, I imagine there'll be different and unexpected paths which are just as fulfilling. So just to take a look at my career journey. So obviously I started in Esri UK, I'm still in Esri UK, and I think it would be really easy to assume that my career journey has been really linear because of that. And this little path you can see at the bottom of the screen here, I think this is a relatively common you know, career path for a lot of people. And again, Catherine alluded to this. You know, so people get a job, for example, a GIS consultant, they find out that they love it, and then they stay. And then they get more and more experience at that organisation, and they offer more to that organisation. And they might move from a consultant to a senior consultant. They might move from one organisation to another organisation, and then perhaps get a promotion again from a senior consultant, perhaps to a lead consultant. And if you love what you do, this is a really great place to be on this really linear career path. But, you know, other career paths are equally as valid. So this one here, you know, you might find that you want to try something out, something a little bit different. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't like it. It's just a bump in the road and you might return back to where you started. Or, you know, equally as valid, and one that, you know, a path that, you know, Catherine followed, is much more of a sort of a wiggly and moving around career path, jumping from place to place. And this is much more as well akin to my career journey. And I suppose the reason I wanted to put these up here is just, again, to reiterate one of the points that Catherine made. It's interesting, I didn't actually see Catherine's presentation prior to this, but lots of the points she made are very similar observations to the ones that I found out. And that's it, is that there's absolutely no one size fits all. You know, when I started out, I specifically remember comparing myself to a lot of my friends, to my peers that have come off my master's degree with me. And that is never a very helpful thing to do. You know, what are people earning? What title have they got? What role are they in? Or how quickly are they, you know, climbing that corporate ladder? You know, a career journey is an incredibly personal thing, and the most important part of it is understanding exactly what is important to you. So I'm going to take a look at my career journey along this wiggly road here. So my first role into Esri UK was a tech support analyst. And as has been mentioned before, that's all about helping customers when they hit issues with the software. And totally aside from the fact that this wasn't in the conservation space, which is where I wanted to be, tech support wasn't really something I massively wanted to do. But I really had to recognise that it was a foot in the door, which I knew that I could build on, and it was an entry point, which is why I took that leap. Whilst I was in that role, I very quickly discovered the thing I liked the most was chatting on the phone to customers, finding out what they were doing, understanding what their problems were, and trying to help them to overcome that and take the next steps. And so what made me think about the fact that I enjoyed that customer interaction so much made me think about applying for a slightly different role in the business. And so I went and applied for a different role in the pre-sales team, which is where Catherine spent her early time in Esri UK. And as a pre-sales consultant, I was out and about with our customers and with our sales team, and I was doing demos and presentations, and I absolutely loved it. And it was exactly the place that I wanted to be. But I'd spent about 2 years already in Esri UK, And I suddenly got this kind of whole itchy feet thing that my life was mapped out for me and I was going to be there forever. And I didn't want that to happen at that point in my life. I was in my early 20s. So I took perhaps a slightly random decision to leave Esri UK and head to Australia. I think most people thought I was slightly mad, having just landed this job that I absolutely loved. But I wanted to go and explore the world. So I travelled over to Australia. I knocked on the door of Esri Australia, and I landed myself a job as a developer there for 2 years. And I think what's really fun about this is it could have been seen as quite a dangerous move, jumping so significantly out of a role. But the experience I gained in travelling and working in a different country was absolutely invaluable. And when I came back to the UK, I was much more mature, I was much more experienced, and I was really ready to get my head down. So I came back to the UK, and of course, straight away, I wanted to get back into Esri UK because I really liked the culture there. And I applied for a slightly different role and entered back in, but this time as a product manager. So a product manager is a slightly different type of role. They're responsible for developing and managing our products and making sure that they're fit for purpose, making sure that they're giving value back to our customer, and just generally understanding their roadmap. With the newfound confidence I had from working as a developer and traveling, I managed to grow from scratch a new product for Esri UK called Local View. And I managed to dig out a screenshot of that product. So this is from many, many years ago, what, 20 years ago or so. And this was my absolute pride and joy at the time. This was built from scratch. And little things like getting these curved corners on these tabs back in those days was a really significant step forward. And I absolutely loved building that. But what I can safely say about that role, of all the roles that I've ever had in Esri UK, is that that was without doubt the most intense. I was living and breathing everything to do with that product, and I did find it quite hard to switch off from it. I started working longer hours. I was managing multiple stakeholders across the business and customers. And after a couple of years in that role, I realised that although I was really enjoying it and I was getting lots out of it, it was also making me probably far too stressed, and that I probably wasn't as nice a person as I could be because of that stress. I got the feeling that I was heading to burnout, and so I decided that it was time to step away from the product and move into something else. So this time I applied for another role within Esri UK, something completely different. And that was an Esri UK startup. So the Esri UK startup at the time was a slightly different place from being in the main business. It was a very small group of us trying to get something off the ground. And I went from being pretty stressed in my old role. If I'm quite honest, I moved into a role where I was actually quite bored. I didn't have as much direction as I liked. Wasn't really quite sure what was expected of me. And I can fairly confidently say it was probably one of the only times in my career that I don't think I was delivering or developing. And that didn't make me very happy at all. I didn't enjoy that environment. The only upside to that was the fact that I was engaged at the time. So it gave me plenty of time to organise my wedding. And this was my lovely wedding day, standing up at the altar. So after that, I knew that it was time to move on. I stayed for about 4 to 5 months in that startup. And then I applied for another role to get back into the main business, into something called the research team. So the research team, it's all about innovating, pushing boundaries of our technology, and demonstrating the art of the possible to our customers, like a sort of a vision of the future for them. And over the course of the sort of prior years, I'd learned so much. I'd learned what had stressed me out. I'd learned what I found boring. And I was back in the business and I was firing on all cylinders again, and really enjoying being quite technical. But it wasn't long while I was in that team until the research manager role came up, actually running that whole team. So I decided to give it a shot, and I ended up leading the team as a research team manager. And it was at this point that I really got a clear view of exactly what I wanted to do and exactly where I wanted to be. I absolutely loved managing that team. I loved being able to recruit people in, to be able to grow people, to watch them develop over time. I loved understanding what the team could offer to the business and make sure that we all delivered as best we possibly could. So I had a fantastic time in the research team as the manager. Again, it was probably another couple of years. And then when I had some very sort of big life-changing events, I had baby number 1, very quickly followed by baby number 2. So as you can imagine, it totally turns your life and your world upside down. And it was also a really interesting time for me because a lot of my peers that I'd met through having children decided to take a career break at that time. But I was quite sure that that wasn't for me. You know, I enjoyed work and I needed the challenge of work to keep my mind busy. But at the same time, it was massively important for me that I didn't miss this really important stage in having children and watching them grow up. So I decided to request part-time hours and I dropped down to 3 days a week. And for anyone who ever goes through this, you'll find it's, you know, quite a significant challenge. Managers on part-time hours at the time weren't really the norm. So I had to be massively organised. I mean, I'm an organised person anyway, but I even had to step it up from that. I had to lose any FOMO that I might have about missing team meetings. So that sort of fear of missing out, I had to know and be comfortable with the fact that I would miss things and that was okay. And the other thing I had to do as a manager was become even more intentional about building a team that didn't need me there every minute of the day. And it's safe to say that, you know, nothing is perfect. It did require compromises on both the family side and on the work side, but it did give me the opportunity to continue to grow my career and to be with my children as they grew up, which was so important. So after about 5 years, another opportunity for promotion came up and I stepped into the head of pre-sales and research team role. As part of this, I took on a larger team. I became part of the management team at Esri UK. So I was involved more in the smooth running of the business and the collaboration between departments. And all that experience I've built up over the years, moving between different areas, meeting different people, was completely invaluable in succeeding in that role. And then most recently, 2.5 years ago or so, I took what is my current role, which is head of product. So quite a sort of winding journey. But I just wanted to touch a little bit onto some of the things I've learned, which are scarily close to some of the things that Catherine talked about. First and foremost, you will learn something from absolutely everything. Some of the moves I've made on paper haven't necessarily been that great. Moving into that startup, for example, but even though it wasn't a kind of massive success in its own right, what it's done is help me shape what happens next, and it gives me experience to call upon later in my career. Trusting the people around you, this has been very significant for me. I've had or been in a very lucky position in that I've had a series of brilliant managers who have championed me along the way. They have helped push me when perhaps I wasn't feeling as confident as I should be about new roles. And they've taken a really genuine interest in ensuring that I succeed. And by trusting their opinion and trusting what they were doing, I've been massively able to benefit from their experience as well. And that is something that I now take with me very seriously as my role as a line manager for others. This has been mentioned before, but a good network is everything. You know, a network will help you immensely. You know, get to know people in your organisation, get to know them outside of your organisation, and you will be able to call on those people and you will come across those people. GIS in particular is a very small industry and everyone does tend to know everyone. Find someone to look up to or a mentor. Again, early on in my career, I identified someone who I thought was doing a great job and I decided that I was going to learn from them. You know, what are they doing well and why? And then try and mirror some of their great behaviours. And then the last one I put there is get feedback. And this is something that I really didn't do enough of when I first started work. But it's really hard to know what is going right and what is going wrong unless someone tells you. If you ask for feedback from the people around me, you've got a really great opportunity to develop, you know, really quickly and to learn some great skills. Oh, and just the last one I added on there, be bold. You know, again, this is relating a bit back to what Catherine was saying. Sometimes moves will be right, sometimes moves will be wrong, but without doubt, you will learn something. If you're unhappy somewhere, don't stay, you know, get moving. You will get to a better place because of it. And I absolutely believe that being bold is the right way to go. So I'm just going to finish now on a little bit about what my job looks like now. And first and foremost, my job is all about people. It's all about the people in my team, and it's all about making sure they have got everything that they need to be successful. You know, whether that is the right amount of challenge coming their way, that they understand the direction that they're heading in, or if it's about, you know, the support that they need when they are in a position when they're not firing on all cylinders. Alongside people, I still do get involved in the technology. The background that I've had over the years means that even though I'm not as hands-on with the technology as lots of people, I've got a really good grasp of the principles. And most importantly, I've got, you know, loads of experience of seeing what our customers get up to. And it means that I can still drive conversations about GIS, even though I can't get into those details anymore. Outside of my direct role, I'm much more involved now in the culture of the business. So of particular importance to me is diversity, equity and inclusion. I have a real passion for ensuring that we get diversity of thought within our organisation, and DEI is a huge part of that. I'm particularly involved in our Women Plus group, and I couldn't recommend this kind of networking group enough. You know, I've learned so much over the past 2 years through this wonderful group. And they've also helped me build my network. You know, I've been around for 25 years in the same place, but there's still lots of people who I've never had the opportunity to meet, and it means that I get to meet these people through this group. And this is a nice picture here of me on a panel this year for International Women's Day. It was an Esri UK and Ordnance Survey panel. And the last thing I just wanted to add is that, you know, I'm still part-time. You know, much like my original idea of working in conservation, I always said that once my children were in secondary school, I would go back to work full time, but I haven't. You know, I'm absolutely still working part-time hours. I like the balance it gives me, and also life changes, and that's what's really important to have in the back of your head. As much as my children are now growing up, I now have elderly parents who need me, and I need that extra time at home to make sure I can give back in other areas of my life. As ever, there's compromises, but they're absolutely ones that I'm willing to make. So I'm going to leave it there, but I'm going to stick around for questions. So please do feel free to put some in Slido, and yeah, I look forward to answering a bit later.